I am David Conrad, Deputy Director of the Office of Indian Energy, and I'll be facilitating this or moderating this panel. Each of the panelists has a more extensive biography online, either at the event website at energy.gov/ArcticX or at their own webpage. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask each panelist to briefly introduce themselves here in the beginning and also provide their perspective on the opportunities and challenges related to energy justice in the Arctic. We encourage the online participants to put questions for the panelists in the Zoom Q&A at any time. In order to have time to address these questions, each panelist will have 8 minutes in their opening remarks. So let's begin the panel discussion with Hallie Bisset, the Executive Director of the Alaska Native Village Corporation Association. Can you share your perspective on the challenges and opportunities of energy justice?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Chinan Guninu, thank you for being here. My name is Hallie Bisset. I am Denina Athabaskan. I am the great-granddaughter of the last traditional chief of Talkeetna. His name was Chief Nikolai. And I'm honored to be here with you today to talk about energy justice in Alaska. I think I would like to just start by saying, the state of Alaska is gigantic, and it's always been about resource extraction here. In fact, it's 586,412 square miles. It's 1/5 the size of the United States and larger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Our resources are abundant. We've got estimated coal resources to be larger than the combined resources of all of the 48 states. We've got some of the highest hydroelectric power potential. We've got the more coastline than the entire United States. We have significant energy potential for geothermal. We have roughly 40 billion barrels of undiscovered, technically recoverable conventional oil resources. 13.7 trillion cubic feet of undiscovered, technically recoverable conventional gas resources, and lastly, rare earth elements, which is kind of the new thing that everybody is talking about. Most of the rare earth elements that we need today are the things that are for going in technological things like the computers that we're talking on together right now, the cell phones that we're using, things like that. Some of the largest deposits are here in Alaska, and they're almost 100% imported by the United States from China and other areas. So resource energy development is going to continue in the state of Alaska. I represent 177 Alaska Native Village corporations that were created under what's referred to as the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. And what that was is it set up for-profit entities that were based on the tribal entities that existed at the time to receive a land settlement that was about $967 million in cash, split 12 ways, and 44 million acres of land that was transferred fee simple tied to Alaska Native corporations. So one interesting aspect of the Native corporation settlement is that if you were to develop any of your subsurface estate resources, and also including timber, if you were to develop any natural resources, that 70% of the net income from those resources had to be shared between the other 12 regional corporations, and 50% of that amount has to be shared with the village corporations that I represent. Well, about 2/3 of the village corporations that I represent are almost 100% dependent on the resource revenue sharing that's currently happening. And 90% or more of that revenue check is coming directly from what's known as the Nana Red Dog zinc mine. Unfortunately, that zinc mine is going to discontinue producing the revenue sharing resources, and we estimate a little less than 10 years. In total, there's been about $3 billion of shared resources in the state of Alaska in terms of revenue sharing that's been shared amongst Alaska Native corporations. So energy development in Alaska is important to us in a financial sense. There are many of us that believe in responsible development of those resources. But when I talk about energy as it relates to justice, there's a couple of things that I want to point out, and I am being cognizant of my time here. Since the discovery of oil, that actually in the late 1960s was actually the catalyst for our land claims deal. Without that large discovery of oil on the North Slope, we may never have had a Native Claims Settlement Act. It wasn't that we were fighting. In fact, we fought for hundreds of years to try and prove to people that, the state of Alaska, or our country, did not belong to Russia and was not, allowed to be sold to the United States. So for 100 years or more, we fought for the right to the claim of 100% of our lands. And we received 44 million acres. That sounds like a lot. We're the largest landowners privately in the entire world, probably, certainly in the United States. And I mentioned $3 billion has been shared from the development of energy resources in our state. But just a couple more statistics is that the state of Alaska has collected about $180 billion of royalties off of our lands. The federal government, somewhere probably around $20 billion. And because we're tax-paying corporations, we've probably paid about $3 billion or so over the last 50 years in taxes on those resources as well. So why do I point all of these things out? Why is that important? In the state of Alaska, rural communities often pay 3 to 5 times the national average per kilowatt hour than any place in the lower 48, despite all the statistics I just told you. In St. George, so we're paying 10 cents, 10.4 cents in the lower 48 per kilowatt hour. In St. George is 84 cents. And Akiak is 38 cents, Caltag is 62 cents, and Nulato at 62 cents. I point these things out because that doesn't sound like justice for Alaska to me. So I'm really excited, though, and grateful for our congressional delegation and the fact that they were able to get such amazing things into this bipartisan infrastructure bill in regards to permitting and in regards to testing some of the technologies in the alternative energy space. My native corporation, Siri, is one of the owners of a wind farm that's out here that serves our largest population in Anchorage. So of course, we're always excited to expand opportunities. You've got a whole community in the island of Kodiak that's almost 100% run on renewable energy. So we know that those things are really exciting in terms of projects that we can develop here. There's even some money set aside for some advanced reactor demonstration projects that we're exploring right now. I won't comment extensively on that because I don't know enough about it. But when it comes to the $146.4 million that was in there to carry out hydropower and marine energy research, we're extremely grateful. Several of my villages have been working for 50 years to get a hydro project in their little village that would bring enormous reductions into the energy costs that they pay. Why is it taking so long? The permitting process, that's one of the things. I mean, you're writing, environmental impact statements every time an administration changes, you got to write a new one. So I'm grateful for the expedited permitting that we saw in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I'm grateful there's capital infrastructure projects that have been put out that we can actually build something instead of just writing and talking about it. And that tribes are being meaningfully included in this. And for the state of Alaska, I want you to understand, just because of the way our Native Claims Settlement Act work, there's kind of a checkerboard of land ownership all over. So some of the things that we've experienced in the past is the definition of tribal lands being, maybe it's only ANCSA lands, but, like I said, there's this checkerboard. So there are little things that we're seeing like that keep the money from coming to Alaska projects. And I hope that we can work through some of those administrative changes to make it a little easier for the villages that I mentioned, all 177 of which struggle with energy prices. Thank you very much for letting me talk today, and I look forward to the others' comments.
Yes, thank you so much, Hallie. Next from the Pacific Northwest National Lab is Dr. Molly Greer. Can you share your perspective on energy justice?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to join today. As David said, my name is Molly Greer. I usually call myself an ocean engineer, and I'm calling in today from Sitka, Alaska on Tlingit Ani. Most of my work has focused on marine renewable energy projects, understanding how to make renewable energy from the waves and tides or offshore wind, as well as focusing on community and energy resilience in coastal communities. I think a big first challenge for energy justice in the Arctic is creating this specific picture of energy justice that applies to the Arctic, as opposed to picturing communities reliant on coal. And Hallie did a great job of painting some of those pictures. We know that energy is expensive in Alaska, but of course everyone wants to pay less for energy. So what needs are specific to the Arctic? I'm thinking updated and efficient microgrids, consistent access to heat, plans for extra resilience and reliability if fuel shipments are delayed, systems for community ownership of these microgrids or energy systems, as well as plans for operations and maintenance in the harsh environments. To address this challenge, my colleagues at PNNL have a newly started project to help assess these metrics that may be specific to Alaska energy justice needs. This project's just getting underway and hoping to select potential case studies in the near future. For opportunities, I first want to highlight the emerging technologies I work on. Wave and tidal energy have an immense potential in Alaska. And to date, these technologies have not been widely deployed, but may be appropriate for Arctic communities where maybe solar is not appropriate or wind is too windy. And it's really exciting to explore in this context. One opportunity in this space is a DOE initiative called the Powering the Blue Economy Initiative. And this works to understand how marine energy might intersect with other emerging markets, such as improving ocean observations that might allow better weather forecasting, or maybe even creating freshwater from saltwater. And that could spur economic development while also developing new methods for creating energy. The Powering the Blue Economy Initiative also works to develop marine renewable energy that meets the specific needs of remote communities, which could include specific operations or maintenance needs, seasonal generation needs, or better understanding of the technology's environmental impacts. Another opportunity at the National Labs is a program I work on called the Energy Transitions Initiative Partnership Project, or ETIP. In this program, remote and islanded communities can apply to receive technical assistance to aid in energy transitions from DOE National Labs, helping to bridge the gap for communities that might not have enough local knowledge in microgrids or renewable energy. We currently have 5 Alaska communities involved in this program, and the applications for the second cohort is open now. So finally, as I'm thinking about how these opportunities intersect with challenges, I find myself thinking about whether or not remote places are the ideal place to test out new technologies. Though these are places where emerging technologies may compete with the current cost of electricity, does deploying an emerging technology in the Arctic actually meet our goals for energy justice? And I'm sure this will be covered more in the second panel, but I'm really interested in making sure we focus not only on getting those electrons to the communities, but also in ensuring that new technologies or economic development does not impact subsistence or other existing community priorities. I hope that that can be a priority and not an afterthought during our energy transition. So thanks again so much for the opportunity to present, and I look forward to answering more questions.
Thank you, Molly. Next, Dr. James Kendall, the Director of Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's Alaska Regional Office from the U.S. Department of Interior. Can you share some of your work and perspective on Arctic energy justice?
I would be very happy to. And first of all, thanks to the Department of Energy and their Alaska team for hosting this webinar. And thank you to the other panelists for letting me join you. Second, a lot of folks don't know exactly what a BOEM is. Well, BOEM is part of the Department of the Interior, and we're responsible for managing the development of the nation's offshore energy and mineral resources in an environmentally and economically responsible way. That is, we work in the ocean. If you go to the beach, swim out 3 miles, that's where we start, out to about 200 miles. So that's from the perspective I come from. Now, in terms of a perspective for energy justice, let's look at the challenges first. First of all, ensuring that the inclusion of tribal members and ANSPA corporations at the very start of any discussions. You've often heard people say they want a seat at the table. Well, in reality, it's their table. I learned that early when I moved to Alaska, that we don't offer them a seat at our table. It's their table. Just start with that. Second of all, a challenge for some is the better use of indigenous knowledge with science in decision making. Now, I'm going to treat that as an opportunity in my next comment when I get to opportunities, because Indigenous knowledge is an opportunity that's been neglected for too long. I come from a hardcore oceanography background. I had to have a paradigm shift, and I cannot emphasize that enough. In terms of a changing Arctic, ensuring the appropriate effort is invested in exploring for and implementing alternative energy sources and technology. And for BOEM, that's in the ocean. I am a recovering researcher, and as most researchers know, there's always another question to address. But I also came from Ohio originally, where the Wright brothers came from. Eventually, they had to take the Wright Flyer out of the bicycle shop and get it up in the air. So in terms of switching to more climate-friendly energy, yes, there's a lot of research going on, but let's get it in the air, okay? Eventually, we have to make some decisions. And then the fourth challenge is developing opportunities for local jobs and businesses that align with the culture and traditional needs and values of the people, using and building upon the vast talent available in this unique environment. People have been living in the Arctic for generations and for millennia. They know how to live and work there. That's why we learned at BOEM, they are not stakeholders, they are partners. Our Indigenous colleagues are partners in what we do. Now let's talk about opportunities. I already started with one, with Indigenous knowledge. While some view this as a challenge, in reality, it will facilitate success in terms of timely decisions, policy development, and garner local support, trust, and respect. BOEM has learned that by working with our Indigenous partners, not stakeholders, that these two knowledge systems, while different, can address the same question, complementing each other and providing a better understanding of the environment. It is a paradigm shift, especially for people that are trained in pure science from the Western perspective. It's a different language. You can have French and Italian. They're both Romance languages. They're different, but they're both should be respected, just like science and Indigenous knowledge. As a result, BOEM now treats Indigenous knowledge and science as independent but comparable knowledge systems in our decision-making system. And I'll have a couple of visuals to show you that. This is a paradigm shift. This is just not a check the box exercise or something that you say. It's something you learn to work with and understand and treat respectfully. And second of all, strengthening the capacity of local peoples to work with government entities and with businesses and industries through collaboration, the highest level of partnership, training, and investment. While local peoples of the Arctic have talent and the ability to work in the Arctic, there is a need to provide additional resources to ensure equity in the requisite partnerships. For example, I don't remember my parents ever sitting down to read a 1,200-page EIS in Ohio, but yet we go to the Arctic and work with our tribal partners, our communities, and yet it's not uncommon for BOEM, Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, to show up multiple times a year with these big documents and expect them to read them. You know, we have to invest and give them the capacity to share with them the ability to digest what we're producing, so there's equity in terms of the relationship. So if you don't mind, could we share my first visual very quickly? That's possible. Okay, this is how we use Indigenous knowledge in our decision-making system. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details. This is an entire lecture in itself. But if you look at the center row, potential activity, research and science, environmental analysis, NEPA, and decisions, we have found through working up here with our colleagues over 40 years that not only can Indigenous knowledge be used with science, but it can also influence the way the science is done. Before you go to the Arctic and put tags on a marine mammal, you ought to talk with the real experts on marine mammals. We can use it in our environmental analysis. We can also use it directly in decision-making. We have found many times that when science and Indigenous knowledge doesn't always agree, we probably haven't done enough science. So in this case, if we need to make a decision now, let's rely on the Indigenous knowledge. This takes years to develop. It's about relationships. That's why our colleagues are partners, not stakeholders. Something we've learned sometimes the hard way. Next visual, please. Very quickly, the last one. Okay, this is documenting our journey. This has been a journey for us. And I don't throw this out saying, pat us on the back, we're so proud of this. This is to document to our Indigenous partners that we've learned something along the way and we're continuing to learn. It is a relationship. So in terms of energy justice in the Arctic, form those relationships, invest in those relationships. And like that famous book from the Middle East, 3 Cups of Tea, it's going to take more like a dozen cups of tea and breaking bread and getting to understand your partners, not your stakeholders, they're partners and colleagues. And with that, that's from the BOEM perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Next, Dr. Cheryl Rosa, the Deputy Director of the U.S. Arctic Research Commission. Can you share some of your thoughts on energy justice in the Arctic?
Thank you, David. I appreciate the invitation to participate in this panel. And just for those of you who don't know, USARC is a small federal agency that makes recommendations on Arctic research and policy to Congress and the Office of the President, among other things. And we also coordinate the Arctic Renewable Energy Working Group, or the RWIG, to promote research on renewable and efficient energy systems in remote Arctic communities specifically. And we, as a group, recognize that the integration of renewable resources and the technologies that support them into a community's current power grid has the potential to generate local employment, decrease air pollution and make for healthier living, decrease carbon footprint, and ideally reduce consumer costs in terms of the amount of money that has to come out of your pocket to cover energy costs per month. And research into renewable energy and energy efficiency are an important part of these efforts. Now, in terms of our group's area of focus, home heating has always been a huge focus for us. Home heating and electricity aiming at increasing energy efficiency and use of renewable energy to reduce heating oil consumption. We heard that directly coming from so many community members that it was kind of the top of our list. The storage of energy, battery technology, indirect community benefits of renewable energy and energy efficiency that don't get typically figured into renewable energy cost benefit analysis. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Increasing potential for industry investment in remote renewable energy projects, and decreasing uncertainty by identifying and mitigating risk to make these investments less risky and more likely to happen. And then finally, our newest focus over the last year and a half has been energy equity. And this has been a topic of day one of our recent Arctic Sustainable Arctic Sustainable Energy Research Conference that took place last April. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link to that in the chat right now. So if folks want to take a look, there are, the sessions were all recorded and there's some materials there that might be of interest. So as a group and as the USARC, we realize that energy equity recognizes that disadvantaged communities have been historically marginalized and overburdened by things like pollution, underinvestment in clean energy infrastructure, and lack of access to energy efficient housing, especially, and transportation. And I think all of this is kind of to the nth degree in Alaska. And low income households often face the highest energy burden. They spend way more percentage of their income on their energy bills and sometimes have to face difficult decisions about whether or not they pay their heat or their water bill, and in order to keep their utilities on. And you've also probably noted, at least I live in Anchorage, and what I have noted is that most early adopters of renewable energy tend to be affluent. The houses that we see solar panels on are often very nice houses. However, those with the least income could benefit most from lower electricity bills associated with some of these energy efficiency approaches, like rooftop solar, for instance. And well-crafted policy can help bring the benefits of energy equity to those that are most in need. And getting back to the Commission's goals, research on equity and environmental justice in remote communities is in early stages, and equity gives equal footing to marginalized groups so they can access, participate, and benefit from energy markets. And scientists and researchers have an important role to play in designing locally appropriate solutions to improve the standards of living and provide increased energy security for all. So we were asked to kind of think about some of the challenges and opportunities related to energy equity and energy justice. And in terms of the challenges, improving affordability and access to energy is a huge challenge. As you all know, remote Alaska is remote. It costs a lot to move things to there. There are challenging weather conditions. Capacity, as somebody noted as one of our first questions, operations and maintenance and the capacity to operate and maintain systems is a huge issue, not only for energy systems, but also for water systems. Placing a value, as I mentioned earlier, placing a value on the non-tangible benefits of renewable energy systems is very important. If you talk to folks from the state of Alaska, often they'll tell you that there are very few to no renewable energy systems that operate in the black. They all operate in the red. But when you look at the equations that are being used for cost benefit analysis, things like benefits like less emissions, smaller carbon footprint, improved public health and environmental quality, both locally and non-locally, jobs and other economic benefits, stable energy prices, energy security just in general, and things like the decreased likelihood of oil spills, et cetera, are not being included in those equations. So trying to figure out how to assess those benefits and figure them in at a local level is very important to try to balance that equation, the cost benefit analysis. Also prioritizing solutions that mitigate or direct systemic environmental impacts on disadvantaged communities. And then finally, and not least important, making sure that local communities have a voice is a challenge that is being tackled in multiple areas that the commission works in. But all of these challenges come with opportunities, and we have an opportunity to work with local communities to create a transparent and inclusive process as energy strategies and technologies are being developed. And again, I'm speaking mostly from the research point of view, but energy security in remote communities can be improved via research in areas such as looking into and research into the historical background that will allow researchers and developers to better understand and address historical, cultural, and institutional dynamics that have led to energy inequities. It's kind of one of those situations where once we better understand the problem, we'll be able to kind of address it more appropriately. Also research into how to best distribute the benefits and the burdens of clean and affordable energy. Approaching and assessing the non-tangible benefits that I was just mentioning of renewable clean energy in remote communities to tip that equation over into the black. And then finally, investigations into how to best achieve community engagement and voice in the development of energy-related policies and programs, as well as the inclusion of Indigenous knowledge, as Jim was talking about in these research projects, which is completely a win-win for both sides, because obviously you don't want to come up with a program in a community that is going to be aimed somewhere where folks either aren't going to use it or aren't going to, it's not going to fit well and aren't going to be able to use it in a way that is beneficial to them. So I was going to mention just really quickly, there are pilot programs out there, and one that I'm going to use as an example is the Communities Leap, the Local Energy Action Program. And this is something that I expect that DOE will be talking about at some point later in this presentation. But this program has created to support communities that are experiencing direct environmental justice impacts. And it will basically help under the initiative. It'll help with technical assistance services to help communities develop their own community-driven energy transition support and approach. So that type of thing allows communities to kind of take things into their own hands and work with others to move things forward. So I'll stop there, and thanks again. Look forward to the questions and hearing others present.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was covered a lot. So
Sorry.
No, that was great. Next, we have Sunny Adams. Hello, Sunny. It's the first time seeing you in a long time. He's the Director of Alternative Energy from the Nano Regional Corporation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Good to see you too. Before I start on my visual, my name is Sunny Adams. I'm the Director of Alternative Energy for Nano Regional Corporation. I've been working for Nano for about 15 years. Prior to that, I worked as a metallurgist up at the Red Dog Mine. I got hired by NANA in 2008. The energy crisis hit, and I've been working on energy projects ever since. Ish, if you can put up the visual, I'd like to talk about our timeline. So this is the timeline for our energy development work. What it really is our roadmap to enhancing our energy security along with lowering the cost of energy. Now, we received 3 grants from the Department of Energy, Office of Indian Energy back in 2008. And one of them was a strategic energy plan. The other was the wind resource assessment. And the third one was the geothermal assessment. The one that really catapulted us forward into energy development and was the strategic energy plan that helped us create our regional energy plan, our energy option analysis. We also created an energy steering committee amongst all the villages and the stakeholders. We held the regional energy summit in 2009 just to verify that the crisis was going on in all the villages. And we also did a regional energy survey amongst our shareholders and tribal members to make sure that they were in support of our energy projects or concepts. And they were, so as long as they didn't interfere with subsistence or traditional activities. And so that's how we all got started. And with the wind resource assessment, we were able to work with, pass the project onto the Northwest Arctic Borough. They installed wind turbines in Deering and Buckland. But, our region up in the Northwest corner has a history of wind turbines. Kotzebue Electric Association has 2 900 EWTs, and their goal is working towards diesel generator off operation. So we went on and we held a solar energy conference in 2015. We then came up with a concept working with DOE and the villages and the energy industry on community solar arrays. That was a brand new concept. Those solar arrays in Deering, Buckland, and Kotzebue are now operational. I think the biggest value to us is not only did we learn about solar energy, we learned about energy storage batteries and diesel off operation. Now, continuing on, our thoughts are that we would like to get to low cost electricity in all of our villages by replicating these projects. But there are some obstacles in the way. You've got to upgrade your controls in your powerhouses. You've got to get site control, and you've got to get buy-in from the communities. So those are some of the challenges that that we've been working on. I think in all this timeline that we're looking at it's not something that NANA did by itself. I think that in order to really make a dent in the high cost of energy for all of Alaska, especially those villages that have to fly in fuel, you really need to partner up with different entities. And NANA has partnered up with the Borough, Kuna Engineering, Deerstone Consulting, Kotzebue Electric Association, DOE, USDA, and mostly working with our tribes. And I think part of the problem we have there is you have such a high turnover rate in the tribes, and then you got changes in leadership. So a native corporation plays a role in a sense that, we've built up institutional knowledge that could be passed on. And right now we're just working on trying to replicate some of these projects. But our goal is to get to diesel off operation in the villages. And if we can get to low cost electricity, we'd like to put in heat pumps in the home to where you're actually heating up the homes with low cost electricity rather than expensive diesel fuel. Like I mentioned earlier, some of these villages have to fly in fuel, and it's having a huge impact on their well-being and keeping people in poverty. Some of the challenges and opportunities that I'd like to talk about for challenges, continue to support. Whenever you get changes in leadership, wherever you're at within the region, that has an impact on your progress. Another thing that we need is we need more of the energy industry to come in and actually provide support and troubleshooting services for these microgrids that you're building. We also need renewable energy training and workforce development. One thing we found that there's a broad spectrum of skill sets that we need within the region to help us with these energy projects, utility management, diesel generator replacement, just a better understanding of renewables. Some of the opportunities, I think if DOE was to reduce their cost share requirements from 50% to 10%, I think that'd be a huge milestone for energy development in Alaska. They did it for one of our projects in I believe it was Noatak, and that really helped. They did it during the pandemic, and it was a huge opportunity, something that we couldn't pass up. I didn't mention the DOE Technical Assistance Grant. That was the one that supported our Energy Steering Committee meetings. And that one really supported our microgrid work, our energy storage batteries and solar. That DOE Technical Assistance Grant, that whoever created that concept, I think Givy was involved with that, but it really helped us, worked on several different fronts for lowering the cost of energy. I think, right now we're doing follow-up and run on all these microgrids. We're trying to optimize the circuit, getting them from manual mode to auto mode. I think we could really use some help with training opportunities, investing in our people that are working on these projects. And it'd be very helpful if national labs would come in and play a role in assisting with the training and making sure that we're getting the life out of the equipment. And lastly, I think when the feds are giving out grants, make sure you give that approval so they can get the equipment on the barges in time for shipping season, because we don't have that opportunity where you can just drive your equipment in. We have to, you either bring it in by barge or you have to fly it in. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Sonny. And thank you to all the panelists for sharing your perspectives. Now we have about 10 minutes for the Q&A from the participants. I know I've been watching the chat. There are a few comments, and I also know some of the panelists have been listening actively and wanted to chime in or ask questions or do some follow-up. Hallie, I think you had something that you wanted to say early on.
Yeah, no, and I also see Mr. Hemsath's question, so I'll address that as well. I changed my background, I want to point out first, because when we're talking about energy development and justice, I'll just move out of the way real quick so you can see the whole thing. So those dots there, those are all contaminated sites. Those were all left here by old World War II. A lot of them were left behind exploration wells. So, and they're open, they're abandoned, they're unplugged. So I would ask, if we're going to be doing more exploration, keep environmental justice in mind. I don't think any of our people pointed that out yet. And these sites here have not yet been addressed in meaningful ways. And we're looking forward to working with all of your offices on getting the ones that have already been created cleaned up. Somebody asked, how do we adjust the needs? There's probably more communities that have needs than we have the resources to get them there. 80% of our state is not accessible by road. I think the high logistical cost in Alaska is something that we should all really be thinking about. So when we implement things like roadless rules and things like that, where we're concerned about the right things, the environment, and I can tell you as an Alaska Native person, nobody cares more about responsibly developing things than my people do. But we do need access at times so the prices can come down in some of these other areas. I would ask that when these larger projects are going on, we are considering our Alaska Native tribal entities and their tribes as actual partners in investment. Jim, I loved what you said about, if we're finding some kind of gap between science and indigenous knowledge, we're probably not doing enough science. And I love that you said that, because one of the things that I like to point out is, and I'll just share with you that I took advanced, biology classes in high school and college level courses in high school. And also, of course, in college, I've always had an interest in science. And if I could just sum up what science is you form a hypothesis, you try that out. If that doesn't work, you try something else out until you figure out what's actually, within some statistical range of certainty. Well, we do that too. That's indigenous knowledge. We've been just doing it for, thousands more years in terms of how our critters are moving, how the herds are growing or not growing, these sorts of things. Indigenous knowledge and science, in my opinion, are the same exact thing. And so I love that you said that we need to continue to work together. I think I need to remind everyone just to be mindful that there are responsible developments happening all over our state. I think the water in the rivers up by the Red Dog mine are cleaner than they've ever been. And that's after, developing stringent regulatory standards. I worked at BP during the Macondo oil spill, and then I worked at Old Harbor when the Colic landed their rig on our island. So I know things happen. I think that there has to be this wonderful balance of regulatory and responsible development as we go forward, because we know our state's going to continue to be important. With all of the gas resources that we have and what's going on in Russia, with Ukraine and Crimea and all of that related to rare earth elements and natural gas. Alaska, this is our table, and I love that you said that too. And so those were my only comments. I hope I addressed. As big projects are going forward, larger, whether it be a mine, whether it be a wind farm, whether it be this or that, that's when we should be looking for opportunities for connectivity to smaller communities. That maybe it doesn't pencil without a subsidy, but if you're going to be doing large projects like these, broadband monies, I mean, how do you connect that with utility infrastructure? Here is crumbling just like it is all over the United States. And as you'll see in the Alaska analysis of the money coming here, a lot of Alaska is going to qualify for those grant monies, and we all need to be watching those and working together and figuring out how we can get as much of that energy infrastructure money come into our state as possible. And I'll shut up. Sorry to take so much time.
Oh, that was great, and I appreciate your passion for this. With the abandoned sites, I just posted to the panelists the DOI tribal consultation, and there is abandoned oil well cleanup in the infrastructure bill consultation. In the overall consultation is coming up, so it's also hard, I think, for so many communities, as Jim was mentioning, to answer discreetly every single question that the federal government wants input on. So in the spirit of something like Build Back Better, what are the community's perspectives of what that would be? And like you're saying, help people create that vision and then engineer back from what that better vision is, and then we can start to draw comments from that. Perhaps that's a way to, rather than, engineer all these comments and drafting everything to meet the needs of the federal recipient. It needs that balance between listening and asking. So anyway, I don't mean to add my own comments to this as the moderator, but I just thought it's an observation I was witnessing. I don't know who's next. I think Hallie mentioned Jim in one of her comments. Jim, do you want to say anything at this point?
First of all, I'm really enjoying this. I think all the speakers are spot on. This Alaska is a frontier. Energy is a frontier as it develops. What better place to come up with new and better forms of energy than in a frontier area where you have so many people that are experts in the area. There's a lot going on. We need to keep our eye on the ball. I've only been in Alaska 11 years. In fact, my background, believe it or not, I am a coral reef biologist. I've worked in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, the Red Sea, and through a very strange route, I ended up in Alaska, and it has been the most educational experience of my life. And in terms of indigenous knowledge, the first taste I got of that, before I even knew what it was, is when I would go to some areas in the Caribbean or in the Pacific Islands and are working on the reefs. I would go to the local communities and ask for their input. I was actually involved in using indigenous knowledge before I knew what it was. So this is something we cannot ignore. Also, I have been to the slope many times where we come up with our little band of people coming up for a public hearing to talk about this EIS and what we're going to do for them, when in reality, that's terribly unfair. People need to be part of the process much earlier. In terms of renewable energy, I know on the East Coast, there's a lot of discussion with my bureau and also off California and Oregon and Washington with wind, offshore wind. We have a lot of wind in Alaska. We also have a lot of tidal energy in Alaska. So I would recommend to my research colleagues, both in engineering and environmental, is what's already on the shelf. And I'll use an analogy. In the state waters of Cook Inlet, you've got oil and gas platforms. Well, obviously the oil and gas industry has figured out a way to put something in the water that can handle the ice and the harsh environment and still stand up. What have we learned from that we can move to a next generation of energy? What is transferable north? Lots of stuff. So with that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We have 1 minute left and Sonny has his hand up. So Sonny, last word.
Thank you, David. I'll make this quick. Climate change, Alaska being on the front lines of climate change is changing the weather patterns. A lot of times we don't see the precipitation like we used to, and which is having an impact on the level of our rivers. And we cannot fly in. I mean, we can't fuel barge our fuel into some of our villages now. It's like a 50% chance of getting it in there. And the one thing I didn't mention in my presentation earlier is the need for roads and interties. We've been spinning our wheels on roads and interties, trying to get it to where we can connect some of these villages to lower the cost of energy. And when Energy Secretary Moniz was in power, we tried to, get a roadmap built on how can we get roads and interties for these villages in Alaska. I think that would have a huge impact on our economic development. So if we could focus a lot on that and seeing how we can get those built within Alaska, that would be great. Thank you, David.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you all, the panelists. We'll have more questions and we'll have time to have further discussion on those after panel 2. But before panel 2 begins, let's take a 5-minute break. Thank you to the audience and we will see you in 5 minutes.